First contact with the dying light Captain Sarah. Chen pressed her palm against the cold viewport of the research vessel Horizon's Edge, watching the dying star pulse weakly in the distance. The ancient red giant flickered like a candle in its final moments, casting eerie shadows across the bridge. After 6 months of deep space exploration, her crew had grown accustomed to strange sights, but this felt different. This felt tragic. Captain, long-range sensors are picking up artificial structures in the third orbit, announced Lieutenant Torres from the navigation station. Whatever's down there, it's big, and it's definitely not natural. Sarah turned from the viewport. Her weathered face creased with curiosity. At 42, she had spent half her life exploring the unknown reaches of space. But something about this system made her pulse quicken. The star was dying, that much was clear, but someone had built something massive in its fading light. Take us closer, Torres. Nice and easy. She settled into the command chair, fingers drumming against the armrest. Marcus, what's your read on that star? Engineer Marcus Webb looked up from his console, wiping grease from his hands with a rag. The big man's face was grim. Not good. Captain, that red giant got maybe 6 months before it goes completely dark. Whatever's in that system better find a new home fast. The Horizon's Edge was humanity's newest deep space research vessel, equipped with the latest scanning technology and a crew of 43 specialists. Their mission was simple: map unknown sectors and catalog new discoveries for the Earth Colonial Authority. What they found in the Kepler 442 system would change everything. As they approached the third planet, the scope of the structures became clear. Massive crystalline spires stretched from the planet's surface into space, catching and focusing the dying star's light. The entire world seemed to be covered in these gleaming towers, creating a web of light that pulsed with fading energy. Jesus, whispered Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the ship's xenobiologist. It's beautiful, and it's alive. The light patterns weren't random. They pulsed in complex sequences, like a language made of pure energy. As they watched, the patterns grew dimmer, the pulses more sporadic. Whatever civilization had built, this was running out of time. Captain, Torres called out, voice tight. With excitement, I'm reading life signs down there. Lots of them, and they're trying to communicate. The bridge fell silent as the main screen lit up with cascading patterns of light. The sequences were mathematical at first, basic counting and geometric shapes. Then they became more complex, more urgent. Sarah didn't need a translator to understand the message. Help us. Security Chief James Rodriguez stepped forward, hand resting on his sidearm. Captain, we should be careful. First contact protocols exist for a reason. Sarah studied the patterns on the screen. In her years of exploration, she had learned to trust her instincts, and every instinct told her these beings were desperate, not dangerous. Dr. Tanaka, what's your assessment? The xenobiologist's eyes never left the screen. The patterns are becoming more frantic, more disorganized. I think they're dying, Captain. Their whole civilization is tied to that star, and it's failing. Torres, establish a stable orbit. Marcus, prepare the shuttle for atmospheric entry. We're going down there, Rodriguez frowned. Captain, regulations clearly state. I know what the regulations state, Chief. Sarah's voice carried the weight of command. But those regulations were written by people who never had to watch an entire species die, while they stood by and did nothing. The shuttle descended through the planet's thin atmosphere, passing between the towering crystal spires. Up close, the structures were even more magnificent, their surfaces carved with intricate patterns that seemed to shift and flow like living art. The dying stars' light danced through them, creating rainbows that painted the landscape in ethereal colors. Landed in what appeared to be a central plaza, surrounded by the largest spires. As the shuttle's engines wound down, the crew could see movement in the shadows between the crystals. Tall, graceful figures emerged, their bodies seemingly made of the same crystalline material as their architecture. The Villani, as they would later learn to call themselves, stood nearly 3 meters tall, with elongated limbs and faces that resembled carved gemstones. Their skin was translucent, revealing networks of light that pulsed beneath the surface like living circuitry. When they moved, it was with the fluid grace of dancers, each step creating small flashes of bioluminescence. The first Villani to approach the shuttle was clearly ancient, its crystalline form clouded with age, the light beneath its skin dim and flickering. It raised one hand, and patterns of light raced across its body, forming complex geometric shapes that pulsed with meaning. Dr. Tanaka's portable scanner hummed as it analyzed the light patterns. "Captain, I think I'm beginning to understand their language. They communicate through bioluminescent displays. This one is saying something about time running out." Sarah stepped forward, removing her helmet to show her face. The gesture was universal trust, vulnerability, openness. The ancient Villani tilted its head, and new patterns flowed across its form. These were softer, more tentative. "Tell them we want to help," Sarah said, as Dr. Tanaka worked to establish basic communication. More Villani emerged from the crystal spires, young ones with bright, quick-flashing patterns, adults with steady, rhythmic pulses, elders whose light was growing dim. All of them carried the same underlying message: desperation. Through painstaking translation, the story emerged. The civilization was millions of years old, built entirely around their symbiotic relationship with their star. They had evolved to photosynthesize stellar energy, their entire biology dependent on the complex light spectrums their sun provided. Their crystal spires weren't just architecture, they were life support systems, focusing and distributing stellar energy to sustain their entire species. For millennia, they had been part of the Galactic Trade Consortium, a vast network of spacefaring civilizations that spanned thousands of systems. They had contributed their unique understanding of energy manipulation, their artistic mastery of light, their philosophical insights gained from eons of contemplation. In return, they received protection and technological support. But when their star began to die, the consortium's support vanished overnight. The Villani were classified as a terminal civilization, too expensive to relocate, too specialized to adapt. Their contributions to galactic culture were archived, their trade agreements terminated, their calls for help ignored. They just abandoned them. Dr. Tanaka's voice was thick with disbelief as she translated the elder Villani's light patterns. The ancient being's form dimmed further, its patterns becoming irregular. Through the translation matrix, its message was clear: we are forgotten, we are lost. We are grateful someone came to witness our ending. Sarah felt anger rising in her chest like molten metal. She had seen callousness before, bureaucratic indifference to suffering, but this was something else entirely. This was the systematic abandonment of an entire species simply because helping them wasn't profitable. "Ask them about their population," she ordered. The numbers were staggering. Nearly 1 billion Villani across dozens of crystal cities, all facing extinction as their star died. The youngest would last perhaps a year without proper stellar energy. The eldest were already beginning to fade. Marcus Webb had been quietly scanning the crystal spires during the conversation. "Captain," he said over the com, "these structures are incredible. They're like nothing I've ever seen. The energy conversion efficiency is off the charts. If we could figure out how they work." "You think we could help them?" Sarah asked. "Maybe. Human fusion technology produces a full-spectrum output. It's not exactly what they're used to, but it might be enough. The real problem is scale. We'd need massive installations to support even a fraction of their population." Sarah looked at the gathered Villani, their light patterns growing dimmer by the hour. Behind them, the crystal spires stretched into the darkening sky, monuments to a dying civilization. The consortium had written them off, but humans had never been good at accepting the impossible. Dr. Tanaka asked them if they've ever considered relocating to a system with a younger star. The translation sparked an immediate response. Light patterns flashed rapidly between the gathered Villani, a complex conversation in colors and pulses. Finally, the elder responded. "They say they tried," Dr. Tanaka translated, "but their biology is too specialized. They need specific light wavelengths, precise energy patterns. Even if they could survive the journey, they would die slowly on any other world." Rodriguez stepped closer to Sarah. "Captain, even if we wanted to help, the regulations are clear. Non-interference in local political situations. This could be seen as meddling in consortium affairs." Sarah stared at the fading Villani, their desperate light patterns growing weaker. In her mind, she could hear the voices of her academy instructors, drilling regulation after regulation into young officers. Don't interfere. Don't take sides. Observe and report. But she could also hear her grandmother's voice from her childhood, telling stories of the old days when humans had fought against impossible odds to protect the innocent, when being right mattered more than being safe. "Prep the shuttle," she said finally. "We're going back to the ship." Rodriguez looked relieved, but Dr. Tanaka's face fell. "Captain, we can't just leave them." "We're not leaving them," Sarah replied, her jaw set with determination. "We're going to figure out how to save them." As the shuttle lifted off from the Crystal Plaza, Sarah watched the Villani growing smaller below. Their light patterns had changed, becoming more organized, more hopeful. Somehow, they understood that the humans weren't abandoning them. Back aboard the Horizon's Edge, Sarah called an emergency meeting in the main conference room. The senior staff gathered around the holographic display showing the Villani homeworld, its crystal spires glittering weakly in the dying star's light. "I'm going to be direct," Sarah began. "Those people down there are going to die if we don't help them. All of them. An entire species with millions of years of history, culture, and knowledge, wiped out because the Galactic Consortium decided they weren't worth saving." Chief Medical Officer Dr. Patricia Reeves leaned forward. "Captain, I understand the emotional appeal, but we have to consider the practical limitations. We're talking about nearly 1 billion individuals with highly specialized biological needs. Even if we had the resources, which we don't, the logistics would be impossible, would they?" Marcus Webb pulled up his engineering schematic. "Been analyzing the crystal spire technology. It's based on quantum light manipulation, something we've theorized but never implemented. If we could reverse engineer even a fraction of their capabilities, we could create portable life support systems." Dr. Tanaka nodded eagerly. "The Villani have offered to share their knowledge freely. They're not asking us to relocate their entire Population just helped them establish sustainable colonies on worlds with compatible star types. And how many consortium laws would we be breaking in the process? Rodriguez asked quietly. The room fell silent. Everyone knew the answer. The Galactic Consortium maintained strict protocols about species intervention, especially when it involved civilizations they had already classified as terminal. Helping the Villani wouldn't just be illegal, it would be seen as a direct challenge. To Consortium authority, Sarah stood and walked to the viewport, staring out at the dying star. 20 years ago, before I joined the Colonial Authority, I was a relief worker on Mars during the great dust storms. We had regulations then, too. Protocols about resource allocation, risk assessment, acceptable losses. She turned back to face her crew. I watched children die because the paperwork said helping them wasn't cost-effective. She placed her hands on the conference table, leaning forward to look each officer in the eye. I swore that day that I would never again let regulations prevent me from doing what was right. The Consortium had their chance to help the Villani. They chose profit over compassion. Now it's our turn to choose. The debate continued for hours. Some argued for strict adherence to protocol, others for limited humanitarian aid that could be justified within existing regulations. But Sarah's mind was already made up. She had seen the desperate light patterns of a dying species, had felt the weight of their history and the tragedy of their abandonment. We're going to save as many as we can, she announced. I'm authorizing full cooperation with the Villani. We'll share our technology, help them develop sustainable colonies, and provide transport to suitable worlds. Anyone who wants to transfer to another ship when we reach the next starbase is free to do so. Rodriguez cleared his throat. Captain, the Consortium won't just file a complaint. They'll send enforcement fleets. This could be seen as an act of rebellion. Sarah smiled grimly. Then I guess we better make sure it's a successful rebellion. Over the next several days, the Horizon's edge became a hub of frantic activity. Human engineers worked alongside Villani technicians to develop hybrid technologies that combined human durability with Villani energy efficiency. Dr. Tanaka established full linguistic protocols, allowing for complex technical discussions. The medical team studied Villani biology, learning to monitor their unique energy-based life signs. The breakthrough came when Marcus Webb realized that human fusion reactors could be modified to produce the specific light frequencies the Villani needed. The process was complex, requiring precise calibration of magnetic containment fields and specialized filters, but it was possible. We can't save everyone, Marcus explained to Sarah as they watched the first prototype being assembled. But we can build enough portable life support units to sustain maybe 50,000 individuals. That's enough to establish viable colonies and preserve their civilization. Sarah watched the Villani workers moving around the human equipment, their light patterns pulsing with something that looked like hope. 50,000 lives saved from certain extinction. It wasn't enough, but it was a beginning. The first test of the hybrid technology was conducted in the Crystal Plaza, where they had first landed. A human fusion reactor, modified with Villani energy-focusing crystals, powered a small section of spires. The results were immediate and dramatic. The Villani in the test area began glowing brighter, their movements becoming more fluid and energetic. But their success had not gone unnoticed. Long-range sensors detected ships entering the system's outer regions. The distinctive energy signatures were unmistakable Consortium enforcement vessels, closing in on their position. "How long do we have?" Sarah asked Torres. Maybe 18 hours before they reach orbit, Captain. Sarah looked at the work still in progress, the thousands of Villani, who had gathered to help with the evacuation preparations. 18 hours to save as many lives as possible, to give an ancient civilization a chance at survival. All hands, this is the captain, she announced over the ship's comm system. We have company coming, and they're not friendly. I want all essential personnel preparing for immediate departure. Everyone else, we have work to finish. The countdown had begun. Humanity's light in the darkness, the Consortium Enforcement Fleet, dropped out of hyperspace with the precision of a military operation. 3 heavy cruisers and a dozen escort vessels formed a blockade around the Villani homeworld, their weapons trained on the lone human research ship. The message that followed was cold and bureaucratic. Attention, human vessel Horizon's Edge. You are in violation of Galactic Consortium. Directive 847 Alpha. Cease all unauthorized contact with the designated terminal civilization and prepare for immediate departure. Sarah stood on the bridge, watching the tactical display as red icons surrounded their position. The Consortium had sent enough firepower to destroy a small fleet, not a single research vessel. They were making a statement. Captain Torres reported from the navigation station, they're jamming our communications. We can't reach Colonial Authority headquarters. They don't want witnesses, Sarah replied grimly. Chief Rodriguez, status on the evacuation. 4,700 Villani aboard our cargo holds. Another 12,000 on the surface, ready for transport. The portable life support units are functioning, but we need more time. Through the main viewport, Sarah could see the crystal spires of the Villani cities flickering weakly in the dying star's light. Millions of beings still lived down there, their civilization counting its final hours. The Consortium wanted to ensure they died quietly, without anyone recording their extinction for galactic history. Dr. Tanaka, are you still in contact with the Villani leadership? Yes, Captain. They understand what's happening. They're grateful. Even if we can only save a few thousand, we've given their culture a chance to survive. The comm system crackled to life with an incoming transmission from the lead Consortium cruiser. This is Enforcement Admiral Krex of the Galactic Trade Consortium. Captain Chen, you will surrender your vessel immediately and submit to tribunal proceedings for violation of non-interference protocols. Sarah activated the communication array, her voice steady despite the overwhelming odds. Admiral Krex, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the Terran research vessel Horizon's Edge. We are conducting humanitarian evacuation of civilians from a dying world. We pose no threat to Consortium interests. Your actions constitute direct interference in Consortium policy decisions. The Villani civilization has been classified as terminal. All aid has been officially discontinued. Your continued presence is illegal. Your policies condemn an entire species to extinction, Sarah shot back. We're offering them a chance at survival that you denied them. There was a pause before Krex responded, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. Captain Chen, you have 1 hour to transfer all Villani individuals to our custody and surrender your vessel. Failure to comply will result in the use of force. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Everyone understood the implications. The Consortium wasn't just demanding their surrender. They wanted to ensure no Villani survivors could serve as evidence of their abandonment. They're going to kill them, Rodriguez said quietly. All of them, Sarah nodded grimly. Not if we have anything to say about it. Marcus, What's the status on our engines? Fusion drives are at full capacity, but Captain, we can't outrun 3 cruisers. They have us surrounded. Who said anything about running? Sarah turned to address the entire bridge crew. I want all non-essential systems transferred to weapons and shields. Dr. Tanaka, contact the Vellani surface. Tell them to evacuate as many as possible to the northern continent. We're going to buy them time. Captain, Torres protested, this is suicide. We're a research vessel against a consortium battle group. Sarah's eyes blazed with determination. Then we better make sure our deaths count for something. Over the ship's intercom, she addressed the entire crew. This is the captain. In 1 hour, we're going to engage a superior enemy force to protect innocent lives. I won't lie to you. Our chances of survival are minimal. But sometimes, the measure of a civilization isn't in its victories, but in what it's willing to die for. She paused, looking around the bridge at the faces of her crew. Any personnel who wish to evacuate to the surface will be provided with emergency shelters. This is a volunteer mission. The response was immediate and unanimous. Not a single crew member requested evacuation. The hour passed quickly as the Horizon's Edge prepared for battle. Marcus Webb worked miracles in the engine room, coaxing every possible erg of power from their fusion reactors. The weapons systems, designed for asteroid mining and space debris, were reconfigured for combat. It wasn't much against military-grade vessels, but it was something. Most importantly, they had incorporated Vellani crystal technology into their shields. The energy-focusing properties of the crystalline matrices created an unexpected defensive advantage, dispersing incoming energy attacks across multiple frequencies. When the deadline expired, Sarah opened a channel to the consortium fleet. Admiral Krex, this is Captain Chen. We respectfully decline your offer. Then you have chosen to die for nothing, Captain. All vessels, open fire. The space around the Horizon's Edge erupted in weapons fire. Plasma beams and particle cannons lit up the darkness, converging on the lone human ship. But instead of being vaporized instantly, the research vessel's modified shields held, the Vellani crystals dispersing the energy in spectacular displays of rainbow light. Shields holding at 60%. Rodriguez reported, amazement in his voice. The crystal matrices are actually working. Sarah gripped her command chair as the ship shuddered under the assault. Return, fire, all weapons. The Horizon's Edge's response was modest but precise. Mining lasers, reconfigured for maximum intensity, lanced out at the nearest escort vessel. The beams, focused through Vellani crystal arrays, carved through the ship's armor like hot knives through butter. Direct hit on the escort determination, Torres announced. They're losing atmosphere, but the victory was short-lived. The consortium ships adjusted their tactics, concentrating fire on specific shield sections. Slowly but inevitably, the Horizon's Edge's defenses began to fail. Hull breach on Deck 7, Rodriguez reported. Emergency teams responding. Captain, Dr. Tanaka called from her station. I'm receiving a transmission from the surface. The Vellani are there doing something. On the main screen, the crystal spires across the planet's surface began to pulse in unison. The fading light of the dying star was gathered, focused, and amplified through the planetary network of crystalline structures. Beams of pure energy lanced up from the surface, striking the consortium vessels with devastating precision. What the hell? Admiral Krex's voice cut through the static. The Vellani had turned their entire planet into a weapon. Every crystal, spire, every energy-focusing array. Every piece of their ancient technology was now directed at the fleet threatening their human rescuers. The beams weren't just light, they were concentrated stellar energy, the accumulated power of millions of years of stellar engineering. 2 escort vessels were destroyed instantly, their hulls unable to withstand the focused stellar radiation. The heavy cruiser's shields flared and buckled under the assault. For the first time in the battle, the consortium forces found themselves outgunned. "This is impossible." Krex's voice carried a note of panic. "Our intelligence said they were a peaceful species." Sarah smiled grimly as she watched the tactical display. "They are peaceful, Admiral. They're also desperate. And they've had millions of years to perfect their technology." The battle turned decisively as more Volani cities joined the defense. The planet's surface became a network of energy beams, creating a protective dome around the horizon's edge while systematically dismantling the consortium fleet. The dying star, in its final hours, was providing the power for one last great act of defiance. But the effort was taking its toll on the Volani. Dr. Tanaka's readings showed massive energy expenditure across the planet's population. They were literally burning their life force to power the defense grid. "Captain," she reported urgently, "the Volani are dying. This level of energy output is beyond their biological limits. They're sacrificing themselves to save us." Sarah felt the weight of that sacrifice settle on her shoulders. An entire civilization, in its final hours, choosing to spend its remaining energy protecting the humans who had tried to help them. "Open a channel to Admiral Krex," she ordered. The consortium commander's face appeared on screen, his expression grim. Behind him, damage control teams rushed to repair his ship's failing systems. "Admiral, you can see what's happening down there. The Volani are dying to protect us. Is your commitment to consortium policy worth their genocide?" Krex's resolve seemed to waver for the first time. "Captain, I have my orders, ... Orders to watch an entire species commit suicide rather than accept help. What kind of galaxy are we building here?" Before Krex could respond, a new voice cut through the comm channel. It was elderly, crackling with interference, but clearly human. "Admiral Krex, this is Admiral Thompson of the Earth Colonial Navy. You will cease fire immediately and withdraw your forces." Sarah's eyes widened. The cavalry had arrived. 3 human dreadnoughts dropped out of hyperspace, their massive hulls bristling with weapons. The Earth Colonial Navy had somehow received word of the situation and responded with overwhelming force. "How, ... double quotes Krex began. "The Volani aren't the only ones with long-range communication technology," Admiral Thompson replied coldly. "Captain Chen's actions have been broadcast across human space. The Colonial Authority considers the consortium's actions here to be crimes against sentience." The tactical display showed more ships arriving by the minute. Not just human vessels, but ships from dozens of other species, civilizations that had grown tired of consortium indifference to suffering. "This is Kepler Command," a new voice announced. "The Andorian medical fleet stands ready to assist in evacuation operations. Rigel Defense Force, offering escort services for refugee transport. The Independent Worlds Coalition condemns the consortium's policy of species abandonment." Within hours, the dying Volani system was filled with ships from across the galaxy. The consortium enforcement fleet found itself outnumbered 50-1 by a coalition of species, united in their opposition to the policy of abandonment. Admiral Krex's final transmission was bitter but resigned. "This isn't over, Captain Chen. The consortium will remember this. Good, Sarah replied. Make sure they remember why it happened. As the consortium fleet retreated, Sarah stood on the bridge, watching the massive rescue operation unfold around them. Hundreds of ships worked together to evacuate the remaining Valani population, while medical teams from dozens of species collaborated to sustain the refugees during transport. The Valani themselves were barely conscious, having expended most of their energy in the planet's defense. But their light patterns, though dim, pulsed with gratitude and something that looked like hope. Dr. Tanaka, Sarah asked, what's their long-term prognosis? Better than we hoped, Captain. Admiral Thompson's fleet brought specialized medical equipment. The Andorians have experience with energy-based life forms. We think we can save maybe 200,000 individuals, enough to establish multiple colonies and preserve their genetic diversity. Sarah nodded, watching as the last of the Valani refugees were loaded onto hospital ships. The ancient crystal spires on the planet's surface had gone dark, their energy finally exhausted. But their sacrifice had achieved something unprecedented. A galaxy-wide coalition dedicated to preventing future genocides. Captain Torres reported, "We're receiving a priority message from Earth. The Colonial Authority wants a full report on everything that happened here." Sarah smiled. "Tell them we'll file our report from the new Valani colonies. We have some refugees to relocate." Over the following months, the Valani established new homes on 17 different worlds, their crystal cities rising once again under the light of young stars. Human technology, combined with Valani energy manipulation, created sustainable colonies that thrived in their new environments. The rescue operation became known as the Kepler Intervention, a turning point in galactic politics. The coalition that formed to help the Valani evolved into the Alliance for Sentient Rights, an organization dedicated to protecting vulnerable species from exploitation and abandonment. Admiral Krex was court-martialed by the consortium for his failure to prevent the intervention. But more importantly, public opinion across the galaxy had shifted decisively against policies that condemned entire species to extinction for economic reasons. Sarah Chen was promoted to Admiral and given command of the Alliance's first dedicated humanitarian fleet. Her mission was simple: ensure that no species would ever again face extinction alone. The Valani homeworld, now a cold and lifeless rock orbiting a dead star, was declared a galactic monument. A simple plaque, installed by human engineers and blessed by Valani lightsingers, bore an inscription in 100 different languages. Here lived the Valani keepers of light and wisdom. Their sacrifice saved not just their own species, but reminded the galaxy what it means to be civilized. May their light shine forever in the stars they helped us reach. But perhaps the most important legacy of the Kepler intervention was simpler than monuments or political organizations. It was the knowledge that when the powerful abandoned the powerless, there would always be someone willing to stand up and say, "Not on our watch." The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Never underestimate the determination of humans who have decided that something is worth fighting for. And for the Valani, who had spent their final hours in desperate battle to protect their rescuers, that lesson was written in light across the stars they now called home. The horizon's edge continued its mission of exploration, but now it carried something more precious than scientific instruments. It carried the knowledge that in the vast darkness of space, humanity's greatest strength wasn't its technology or its weapons. It was its refusal to look away when others needed help.